Hey y'all, welcome to Art of the Budget. My name's Nicole. My pronouns are she and her, and I live in the Pacific Northwest on what is the traditional unceded territory of the Coast Salish Nations. And today I'm sharing with you how I am getting 1 month ahead. So what this really is me sort of revamping the way that I categorize my money. And the reason for that is because, while I've always been kind of 1 month ahead, while I pay some of my bills from my checking account, a lot of my bills or expenses I cycle through a credit card to get rewards and then of course pay it off at the end of the month. And the way that sort of worked out was that basically I was floating the month on credit, but not exactly, because I usually had a fair amount of cash, a few hundred to like over $1,000 in my sort of checking expenses account. So I wasn't floating the whole thing, but I was kind of floating it on credit. Which is not a big deal, you know, in the scheme of things. Of course, it always got paid off every month. The way that I budgeted, as you know if you've seen my videos, is by the month. And so, you know, by the end of the cycle, it would always get paid off. That wasn't a problem because I didn't budget based on any balances in any accounts. I budget based on what's in my budgeting app, which I do the check-ins every week. So, you know, you've seen that. So anyway, that was fine, but it's been a year. It's been an intense, weird year. And, basically I decided that, what is enough has felt really elusive. And so I decided that my emergency fund didn't exactly feel like enough. So what I decided to do was take my funds that I have sort of bookmarked in sinking funds and rearrange things. So really quick, I want to talk about sinking funds. Okay, so what are sinking funds? Of course, I'm sure a lot of you know, but if you aren't familiar with sinking funds, I think in YNAB they're called true expenses. So there's different words. I don't really know what either of those words mean, like why are they called that? But essentially, sinking funds are funds that you put aside for either things that you know are coming up, you know when, and you know how much. Let's say, for example, my car registration. I know about how much that's going to be, and it happens every year at the same time, but only once a year. So I set aside a little bit of money every month. You've seen that in my budget, to make sure that that money is available when I need it. They can also be for expenses that you have no idea when they're coming and you don't know how much they'll be, but you know they're coming. And so a good example of that would be a car repair or like a roof repair. You know that this is going to eventually be an expense, but you don't know when and you don't know how much. And so you set aside money when you can each month or whatever to be prepared for that expense. So I personally have several sinking funds, and I have done okay. I would say that sinking funds wasn't the most natural thing for me. I mean, of course, it makes a lot of sense. Two areas where I've done really well is my car registration and my renter's insurance. I actually have that set as what my bank calls an expense. So every month that comes out without me even knowing, even seeing it, even having to move it. The rest of my sinking funds I move manually. I move the money over manually. So those have gone really well. I actually just paid my renter's insurance and boom, like it came out. I just moved the money over and it was done. And now my bank will just start saving for next year. So that's really great. Areas where I've had a little more trouble are, I guess maybe it's actually the more unexpected ones. So of course my cat sinking fund, my pet expenses sinking fund has gotten a lot of action this year. throughout quarantine, right? It's really been marked by cat health problems. And right now I think I'm a little bit in the negative. I still, of course, have my actual emergency fund, but I liked that buffer of having my own like cat emergency fund or cat sinking fund to just sort of keep me from needing to dip into that true emergency fund. Okay, so that is what sinking funds are. That is how I've used sinking funds. If you're interested in what other sinking funds I have, I'd be happy to talk about it in a different video. And of course, you can kind of see it in most of my budget videos. Okay, so here's what my new plan is. So at the beginning of the year, every year, I look at the whole year. I sort of project what I'm going to make in terms of income, and then I figure out what my goals are for the year. And this year, my two big goals were building up a car repair or replacement fund and building up a down payment fund. So I was hoping to get to about $5,000 in each. And so for a car, that'd be pretty good. It'd be pretty close to, you know, what I would want. I could replace my car for that much. Down payment, obviously that's just a little tiny bit of it, but I really want to wanted to start working towards that goal. And I still do, but as I mentioned in my yearly update, with losing my side gigs, which, like, not complaining, very, very thankful to still have my full-time job. I just don't have that income to really get to those goals this year. Not that I'm abandoning them, but, you know, if I don't make it to them, I'm not going to be upset. And I am kind of reevaluating things. So this is what I'm going to do. For the purposes of this, I'm just going to talk about my emergency fund, my car fund, my down payment fund, and my new category, which is called next month. Oh, and I did want to talk about one more thing, which is that during quarantine, I have been saving back part of the money I'd normally put in my Roth IRA. So I would normally send $500 to that, but I've been sending $250 and adding that extra $250 to my emergency fund. And this was just in case I needed to access the cash, in case I had a more significant job loss, that kind of thing. And so I'm also using those funds. So my emergency fund, my car fund, my down payment fund, money that I saved back from my investments, and my new fund, the next month fund. What I decided to do was take $1,000 from my car fund. So I had till this point saved up $2,102.60. And I decided to take $1,000 from there. I decided to take $1,000 from my down payment fund, which up until this point was $2,123.69. And I decided to take the cash that I had available from saving back from my investment account. And that equaled about $3,000. And I went ahead and I plunked that into my emergency fund. But in my head, I put it in my actual emergency fund because that is the highest interest I'm getting right now. So it is actually in that account. But in my head and in my budget, I'm calling that next month. So $3,000 is about my base pay in a month. And I've actually got that in cold hard cash, well, in cold hard bank account. And what I'm going to begin doing is when I get my paychecks, instead of plunking them into income, I'm going to go ahead and plunk them into next month. And in my actual bank account, I will place them immediately into my emergency fund. And then at the beginning of each month, I will move $3,000 or whatever I brought in from my paychecks over to my checking account. The cool thing about this is that I can just immediately pay all my bills, pay anything that's due, or if it's just, I mean, most of my bills actually come out automatically. So anyway, they're good to come out. I know it's sitting there. That is typically was the situation, but I did need to just double check and make sure that things were where they needed to be to come out. So that's my new system. I wrote it out if you want to see. So now my emergency fund is still $10,000. My next fund is about $3,000, and car is $11,0260, and down payment is $11,2369. So that's my new plan. It really is just sort of semantics, like where I'm placing things, but for me, arranging my money in sort of different goals, which is something that my bank allows me to do, has actually really helped me be better on top of my funds. And so for me, it was important to do this. The way I see it is that essentially my emergency fund is now $3,000, which if you go back to my emergency budget video, which I'll link down below, I'll link it down below. My emergency budget is about $2,000 a month. That's just to keep the lights on, keep everyone fed, to keep everyone medicated. And so at $13,000, that is a solid 6 months. And I don't have to worry that if I were to suffer a job loss, that I would need to go in and pay all the expenses sort of sitting outstanding on my credit card, or risk, incurring interest charges. So $13,000 emergency fund in essence. Let me know down below how you organize your things. Let me know down below if you think this is kind of like silly. Again, for me, it was just a really nice way to see everything and see how it worked. Of course, now I'm a little bit more behind on my goals, but for me, the security is knowing that I have that emergency fund, and I will keep working towards my goals as much as I can, bit by bit, throughout the rest of this year. I hope that in the new year, things will be either equally stable, or I may be able to do some of my adjunct teaching to bring in more income, but we'll see what happens. That's my plan for the end of the year. Let me know down below what you're doing, and if you've rearranged anything to deal with the pandemic life, and I will see you in the next video.